Do you know how miraculous it is that a tiny seed, buried in darkness, breaks through the soil into glorious light? This natural process mirrors a profound spiritual truth. Our efforts alone are not enough. It is God who brings the transformation. In our lives, prayer functions much like planting seeds. We lay our desires, hopes, and fears before God, sowing and planting through our petitions and faith, but it is ultimately God who gives the increase, fostering growth, and bringing the harvest. Prayer is not just a ritual or a wish cast into the wind. It is the very breath of the spiritual life. It connects us directly to the Creator of the universe, who has the power to alter circumstances, change hearts, and bestow blessings. Through prayer, we communicate with God, expressing our gratitude, seeking guidance, and interceding for others. It is our spiritual lifeline, as essential as air and water are to the seed buried in the soil. Like any gardener, we must understand that the act of planting is just the beginning. When we pray, we are planting the seeds of our faith in the fertile ground of God's omnipotent care. We water these seeds with our ongoing trust and patient expectation, but we must leave the growth to Him. The mystery of how a seed transforms into a sprout is akin to the mystery of how our prayers translate into divine actions. The Bible is replete with examples of prayer warriors who planted spiritual seeds. Consider Hannah, who poured out her soul before the Lord in her deep anguish and sorrow. Her faithful prayers were the seeds that eventually led to the birth of Samuel, a great prophet who would anoint kings. Her story in 1 Samuel reminds us that earnest prayer from a heartfelt place aligns us with God's sovereign plans. Moreover, Jesus himself taught us the importance of prayer. In the Sermon on the Mount, he didn't just give us the Lord's Prayer as a model. He showed us that prayer is foundational to our relationship with God. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. These words from Matthew 7, verse 7 aren't merely poetic. They are a promise that God responds to our diligent spiritual sowing. Yet prayer is not about manipulating God to do our will. It's about surrendering to His. In the Garden of Gethsemane, facing imminent death, Jesus prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." His prayer was a seed of surrender, which led to the salvation of mankind. His example teaches us that the power of prayer often unfolds in ways we cannot foresee or understand. Paul the Apostle knew this well. His letters to the early churches often emphasized the power of prayer, not just for personal gain, but for the growth of God's kingdom. In his letter to the Corinthians, he likened the church's efforts in ministry to planting and watering seeds, but he reminded them that God gives the growth. This underscores that our prayers are part of a larger divine tapestry. Prayer also acts as a tool for spiritual warfare. Ephesians 6 verse 18 urges us to pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, we are to be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Prayer is our defense and our offensive weapon against the adversities of life and the schemes of the enemy. The effectiveness of prayer is not dictated by the eloquence of our words or the length of our prayers. Rather, it is measured by the sincerity of our hearts. The parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector in Luke 18 verse 10 to 14 illustrates that a humble, contrite heart is the fertile soil in which the seeds of prayer thrive best. In our communities, prayer should be the heartbeat. When we gather in unity to pray, we are collectively sowing seeds for a harvest of righteousness and peace. James 5 verse 16 tells us, "The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective." This collective power can bring healing, restoration, and revival to our families, churches, and nations. However, patience is vital. Just as a farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and latter rains, so too must we be patient with the seeds of prayer we plant. Our timing is not God's timing, and while we await the answer to our prayers, we grow in faith, perseverance, and character. Furthermore, prayer is an act of faith. Every time we pray, we declare our belief in the unseen. We acknowledge our dependence on God, recognizing that without Him our efforts are in vain. This humble acknowledgement is fertile ground for spiritual growth and maturity. Let us not grow weary in our prayer life. The parable of the persistent widow in Luke 18 verses 1 to 8 encourages us to always pray and not give up. She was rewarded not because of her persistence alone, but because of her faith that justice would be served. In the same way, our persistent prayers, sown like seeds of faith, will produce a harvest in due time if we do not give up. Prayer is the act of planting spiritual seeds with faith, knowing that the increase is in God's capable hands. It aligns our hearts with God's will, empowers us to act according to His purposes, and equips us to face the challenges of life. Let us, therefore, approach the throne of grace with confidence, knowing that when we sow in prayer, God promises a season of spiritual harvest beyond what we can imagine. The true power of prayer lies not just in our ability to speak to God, but in our willingness to entrust Him with our deepest needs and desires. Like a farmer who plants seeds and waits with expectation, we too must learn the art of patience and faith, believing that God will work His divine will through our prayers. As we sow our prayers like seeds of faith, let us rest in the assurance that God, in His perfect timing, will provide the increase and bring forth a bountiful harvest in our lives. If you've been inspired by this message and wish to delve deeper into the transformative power of prayer, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll gain access to a wealth of resources designed to strengthen your faith and enhance your prayer life. Join our community today and continue your spiritual journey with us.